Solution for empty boxes. Once a toothpaste factory had a problem with its packaging, and because of packaging problem some empty boxes were shipped without tube inside. Production line designing engineers knew it was quite difficult to have exact precision of packing tube into pack with perfection every time. They also knew it was very necessary to sort out this problem so that people buying product don't get frustrated. CEO knew that unsatisfied customers may lead to lower market value of product in market and company will face huge loss. So he gathered all engineers from all departments, and after all discussion they decided to hire external engineering company to solve this problem of empty boxes. After spending a huge amount in 6 months' time the problem was solved. A high-tech precision scale was installed on production line. Once the boxes are filled with tube, then it would be sent on that precision scale and would sound a bell and flashlight whenever a box weighted less than required weight. Process was like whenever scale rang bell because of empty box, then line would stop and someone had to go over there and move the defective box off the line and then press start button to restart the line. Few days after installing that precision scale, CEO decided to take a look on how it was going as he wanted to know if it was good enough. Scale was working fine and it was detecting empty boxes perfectly, and now even market share were gaining. After some time again when he reviewed about working of production line, he found out that number of defected boxes picked by that scale was 0. Previously it would pick at least a dozen defected boxes per week, but now it was 0. He thought that there must be some mistake with report. He filed a report for bug in that scale and asked engineers to check. After some investigation, engineers reported that the statistics were indeed correct and scale was not picking defects because all the boxes that got to scale were good. Perplexed, CEO went to factory and walked to part of production line where scale was installed. He saw that there was a desk fan placed just few feet before the place where scale was installed, and that desk fan was blowing off all the empty boxes into the bin. Curious, he asked workers around about that. One of the workers stated, "Oh, that it was placed by that guy who had to keep check on that scale and start line again, because of which he was tired of walking over every time the bell rang." Moral: every problem have solution, but because of always thinking in particular way, we sometimes are not able to see around that problem and think of easier and better solution. Now let's jump to a new story. The story about engineers' problem in testing. Once engineers at one of major aerospace company were testing the effects of bird strikes on the windshield on various jets and airliners. So to stimulate the effect of a bird striking a traveling plane at high speed, engineers decided to make a powerful gun with which they could fire dead chicken from freezer at the windshields. After some test, engineers declared that the test was very successful and the stimulation they used with gun and dead chicken worked very effectively. Many articles and projects were published related to the suitability of windshields and tests done to prove that windshields were now suitable for planes. At the same time, in other part of world, some other scientists were trying to assess same thing but on windshields of very new high train speeds. These train test engineers had heard about the pioneering test developed by aerospace team, so they approached them and asked proper specifications of the test and way to conduct that test and the gun and dead bird. Aerospace test engineers were happy to provide with all the details related to test done on windshield. Now train engineers were all set to build their own stimulation of bird striking high-speed train, but when tests were done, results were shocking. Windshields that were supposed to be of high resistance to bird strike were smashed into pieces. In fact, every single windshield they tied for testing was shattered along with the test booth itself. Train engineers were horrified and concerned about the new high-speed train safety and technology, so they went to aerospace engineer with long report of failure of test and asked for advice and suggestions. After reading the report, a brief reply was sent from aerospace company test engineers, and that was, "You need to defrost the chickens first." Moral: sometimes we work hard and focus on important things but forget to notice small things that we overlook because of pressure and work. So we need to sit and think for little and we can find solution. Now let's jump to a new story again. Story about HR manager working. Once a very highly successful human resource manager was killed in a tragic accident. His soul arrived at the pearly gates where St. Paul received him. Saint said, "Before you settle in, I want to tell you something. We have never had a human resource manager made it this far and now we are not really sure what to do with it." Manager said, "Oh, can't you just let me in?" Saint replied, "Well, I would like to, but we have order from higher authority that before allowing you to enter, we should let you have a day in hell and a day in heaven, and then you can choose for yourself where would you like to go for eternity." Manager said, "I would prefer heaven. But before you decide, you have to live a day in both places," said Saint. In an instant, HR manager was sent to hell. As doors opened in hell, he entered. He saw a beautiful golf course. Around were many fellows and friends. As they saw him, all come to him and welcomed there. All played golf and enjoyed awesome dinner. Then he got to meet Devil, who was very nice, and both spent time telling jokes and having fun together. Before HR knew it was time to leave, he said goodbyes and stepped into elevator which took him up in heaven. Here Saint was waiting for him and said, "Well, now it's time to spend a day in heaven." As doors opened in heaven, he entered. He spent next hour moving around on cloud, playing harps and singing, but it was not as enjoyable as his day in hell. As day ended, HR was returned to Saint and meet him at Pearl Gate again. Saint asked him, "Now tell me, where would you like to go? Hell or heaven?" Manager thought for a while and replied, "Well, heaven is good, but I had better time in hell. So, I chose hell." So as per choice, HR was sent to hell. HR was very happy to go. As doors of elevator opened, he found himself standing in an obsolete place covered in dirt and garbage. He even saw his friends and fellows in rags. All things were totally different now. In meantime, Devil came to him and put his hands around him. HR was shocked and stuttered, "I don't understand. Yesterday when I was here it was so much fun and now it's just dirty and miserable." They looked at him and smiled, "Yesterday I was recruiting you, but today you are staff." Now let's jump to a new story again. The funny couple stories. Fairy grants couple wishes. Once a couple were out to celebrate their 45th wedding anniversary. They went to a restaurant for dinner. After meal, on this occasion, husband presented wife with a very beautiful antique gold chain with locket. Wife was very happy and she opened locket. A tiny fairy appeared in front of them. Couples were amazed to see that fairy. Addressing the couple, fairy said, "Your such long devotion to each other has released me from this locket. Now in return I grant you both one wish each. Wish for anything you want." Without thinking much, wife wished, "Can I travel all around world with my husband?" Fairy waved her wand and her wish was fulfilled. Magically on table there were 2 first-class tickets for round the world tour for them. Couple were very happy to see that. Now fairy turned toward husband and said, "Now, your turn." Husband thought for few seconds and then said, "Forgive me, but to really enjoy that holiday around the world, I yearn for younger women, so I wish that my could be 30 years younger than me." Fairy glanced at wife and with twisted look in her eyes, fairy waved her wand and within second, husband became 30 years older than his wife. Husband's love for wife. Once there was a couple. Husband used to drink a lot and mess up things when come home, which used to anger his wife and they used to fight a lot about it. One day Mark wake up at home in morning after a huge hangover. He forced himself to open up his eyes and first thing he sees in front of his eyes were a glass of water and some aspirins for his headache on the side table. After taking pills he sit up straight on his bed and sees that his clean and ironed clothes were kept on table. He was surprised to see this. Again he looked around and saw that everything around him was in order and clean. He saw that there was a note on table. Honey, breakfast is ready and I am leaving early for some work. Love you, was written on the note left by his wife. After reading note, Mark went to kitchen where he saw that morning newspaper was kept aside his breakfast. He saw that his son was also sitting there eating. He was curious to know what happened last night, so he asked his son, "Son, what happened last night?" His son replied, "Dad, last night you came home at 3 in morning, you were drunk and out of control. You broke some furniture and puked in way and even stumbled into door." Confused husband asked, "So, why is everything in order? Why you everything is so clean and organized?" His son replied, "Oh that. When mom dragged you to bedroom and tried to take off your clothes. You said, 'Lady please leave me alone, I'm married.'" Quote.